Well, greetings. Welcome to the Dividing Line. It is a Thursday. Tuesday didn't turn out to work well for doing a program. I apologize for that. Just a reminder that next week's up in the air. Hopefully, by the end of next week, we can get back to somewhat of a regular schedule, I hope. We'll see. Have surgery on Monday, so I hope that's the last one for a while, but I hope the last two were the last one for a while. So I'm proving to be a challenge to the doctors. So there you go. So just less than an hour ago, I was sent a link to 60 Minutes with a brief clip. There's going to be an interview with Pope Francis on 60 Minutes. And I'm not going to bother trying to throw... Oh, hello. I'm not going to bother trying to throw video up. We'll just have the audio. It's just the Pope talking, so it's, you know what he looks like. Anyway, this is a interesting exchange. And I think it gives you a good idea of the mindset of Pope Francis. It's a mindset that those of us who have been observing the degradation of mainline Protestant denominations for decades are very, very familiar with. There has been just as much degradation within Roman Catholicism during that time period. There are all sorts of, as I've said over and over again, you can find conservative Roman Catholics, and you can find the entire spectrum that you have within any kind of rational definition of Protestantism within Roman Catholicism. So you can go to Boston College and see everything there. But a lot of Roman Catholics don't recognize that. They don't understand that. This is the first pope who has just openly embraced that perspective and that worldview. And if he is successful in doing what I think he's been trying to do for a number of years, and that is to determine his succession and his successor, it's going to result in a major shift within Roman Catholic theology, within your lifetime anyways, depending on how old you are, within the next couple of decades, most definitely. So here's the question, and obviously, these questions were written out first and went from there. But here's Pope Francis.
There are conservative bishops in the United States that oppose your new efforts to revisit teachings and traditions. How do you address their criticism?
You used an adjective, conservative. That is, conservative is one who clings to something and does not want to see beyond that. It is a suicidal attitude. Because one thing is to take tradition into account, to consider situations from the past, but quite another is to be closed up inside a dogmatic box.
Okay, again, Fuller Seminary grad here. We've heard all this before, and I can't help but think there was this. I think Protestia calls them pastrix. Let me see. Where did I? Sorry about that. Where did I put that one? Yeah, here it is. There's this undoubtedly PCUSA chick, okay, who pretends to be a pastor of a church. And I had PCUSA pastors. I had PCUSA professors in seminary that one I had for 5 or 6 classes. I learned a tremendous amount from them. But I always knew that we were really far apart on a lot of things, a lot of foundational things. But it was different in the 80s than it is today. 40 years have passed, and the mask has slipped. Let's just put it that way. So the Pope is trying to be, he has to be, he recognizes that he's leading a multifaceted group. You can only go so fast without creating irreparable schism. But he wants to go particular directions. He wants to take the Roman Catholic Church particular directions. And they are directions that are very much different than his predecessors. I don't know how anyone can argue this. I don't know how anyone can say, oh, no, that's not what's going on. No, it's so obvious that you have to be twisting reality to not see it. So how long is this one? I don't even know if I want to give this chick.
So many people
It's 2 minutes long. Maybe. Hold on just a second. My experience in seminary, my experience in academia, my experience in doing debates is that what we used to call liberals, which I don't call liberals anymore, I call them leftists, because liberalism speaks to an openness to other perspectives and things like that, which they don't have. Leftists do not believe that quote-unquote conservatives have anything meaningful to say. And that was what Francis said. It's clinging. It's suicidal. It's clinging on to something. And all you have to do is go back, look at the debate I did with John Shelby Spong. He had not even asked. If he had asked us, we would have provided to him links to programs, things that I'd written on the subject of homosexuality. He didn't ask because he didn't care. He doesn't believe we have anything meaningful to say. That's just all there is to it. And so, Bart Ehrman could care less. Even when I told him I was going to be giving a presentation on some of his favorite texts, you would think someone would want to go, might be good to know where he's coming from. Didn't care. The people over there, they do not believe that conservatives, they just think we're all King James only fundamentalists. And so they don't care. So they don't listen, and they don't take the time. And that's what the Pope was saying. It's a suicidal attitude. Now, what that tells me is he doesn't believe that the traditional dogmatic structure of the Roman Catholic Church is divine in origin. He holds to the same kind of thinking that people have when they go, well, the Constitution is the living document, and, it has to change, it has to grow, it has to evolve. That's where Francis is. And that's the end of Roman Catholicism, historically speaking. It really is. If you get 2 or 3 or 4 of those guys in a row, what's going to be left? I don't know. Schism after schism after schism. But that's the attitude. And so when I was listening to this Pastrix chick, I couldn't help but going, I recognize everything she is saying from my seminary education, but back then they were never this bold as to say it the way she's saying it. They, the constant conversation was, the constant terminology was, well, that's a tension in the text. That's a tension in the text. Not a contradiction. They didn't want to quite say it that way. I would imagine there were already professors on the campus that would do that, but I took all my classes here in Phoenix as the extension campus, and everybody knew extension campuses tend to be significantly more conservative than the main campus in Pasadena would be, because you have more pastors, people actually involved in ministry, actually believe the Bible. That's really what it was all about. So, yeah, I'll go ahead and do this. Why not? I'm wearing my Fox shirt today. So, well, it's not. Well, yeah, you can sort of see it. There you go. There's Fox. There's his little cute little face. Yeah, there you can see Fox a little bit better. So, I think I had Deanie on last time, and I have a shirt with Sophie too. So, yes, I have my kitty shirts. So we hadn't had Fox in there yet. So, anyways, let's try to survive listening to this. This is the domination that, when it was started, traced itself back to John Calvin. And I cannot begin to imagine what Calvin would say listening to this, what this woman is going to be saying. And I look back at the people in the background, and I just go, why are they there? Is it just the leftovers of tradition, or why are they even there? I don't get it. But all right, here we go. Well,
so many people mistake God's law with societal laws that were outlined in the Bible. And this happens all the time. The scribes of these stories, all the stories that we have in the Bible, they never anticipated that their manuscripts one day would be included in our Bible and considered the sacred end-all, be-all.
Now, again, it was a common element of discussion in classes to ask the question, what did the authors of Scripture understand their role to be? Did they understand they were writing Scripture? And those are appropriate questions that fundamentalism doesn't even want to think about. Fundamentalism goes to the other side and says, never ask these questions, never think about these things, because they've seen what's happened when people do. And they make the connection, hey, thinking about that leads to apostasy, therefore we don't think about that. Rather than, we need to think about it better than the people who apostatized. That would be the way to do it. But anyway. And so it can be uncomfortable for us to ask the question, how much knowledge did the authors have? They couldn't have known what the Bible was going to look like 2,000 years after them, obviously. So, duh. But how much knowledge did they have to have? Did they have to know they were writing Scripture? I think of the writer of the Hebrews where he says, someone said somewhere, da-da-da-da. Okay, so from his perspective, the fact that God has preserved it and given it to the church and to God's people is enough. It's not, it didn't matter who said it. It was in Scripture. So there it is. So there's a lot of stuff to think through. Does Paul know when he's writing? I think he does when he's writing Romans and things like that. Does he know that when he's writing to Timothy? I don't know. Nobody does, but you have to be careful how much theorizing you end up doing in the process. But we continue on. Oh, okay.
You know, so many people mistake God's law
Well,
with society and anticipated that their manuscripts one day would be included in our Bible and considered the sacred end-all, be-all. And there's so much written that only pertains to certain people in certain circumstances, bound in time in ancient contexts that were never, ever meant to be permanent law. For example, laws that do not permit a woman to speak. For example, 1 Timothy 2, let's throw...
Do you think God was behind the fact that when she said that, she went, speak? Not allowed what women do, speak. Okay, I cannot, for some reason, X will not allow you, if I'm playing the video, if I pause it, if I hit start, it puts the window back in, and then you have to start all over again. I don't think that's ever happened before. Must be some new feature. I am getting a little frustrated with Twitter, because I will see something pop up my feed, I start to read it, and then it just disappears. It's gone. And I can't find it again. And I'm halfway through a sentence, and it was really interesting, and I want it gone. And now you can't play the video, because there you go. Anyway, all right, fine. I will not press forward with that. The problem is the other video that I have is also in Twitter, and I'm wondering if it's going to do the exact same thing to me. It probably will, so I guess I just have to play it all the way through and hope that I can remember. There's a fellow on Twitter, Manny R. Jones. Manasseh R. Jones is the longer form. And I had said to him, I mean, he goes after Flowers. You know, he judges his soul. He's a reprobate. He's this, that. He's willing to make this issue, without knowing him enough to, I'm going to judge him as a reprobate. And I tried to kindly write to him and say, you might want to leave that to God. You might want to stick to the arguments and, But he quoted a section, and I guess, I'm not sure if Leighton's doing it right now. I saw earlier that he was going to record something today live in response to me. I'm sure it's in response to the last program where we played a section from him on the nature of grace. And again, just, remember, he cannot say that conversion is a miraculous act because he does not believe in original sin. He does not believe that man is dead in sin, slave to sin. I don't know what he thinks heart of stone and heart of flesh means. It would be a good question to ask. Do you believe that a heart of stone can choose to remove itself, but you still have to have someone to give you a heart of flesh? I don't know. There's just so much in the Bible. I can't understand how any synergist understands any of it, to be perfectly honest with you. But anyway, there are just so many of these things. He doesn't, just doesn't have a biblical anthropology at all. And therefore, you get all this weird stuff. And so we were talking about his view of grace and prevenient grace and all this kind of unbiblical stuff. And I made the statement that what he's presenting is sub-Roman. It's beneath Rome's view of grace. It's certainly not consistent with the Reformation by any stretch of the imagination. And it is beneath even what Rome taught and is teaching today, if we can figure out what Rome teaches today with Francis. So let's leave him off to another side. But I just got distracted. Sorry. I looked back at the screen, and there's someone called the Office Calvinist. I guess they use memes from The Office, which Summer love The Office. And it says, my week after finding the trove of James White debates on sermon audio. And so it's three of the Office people in an elevator. And the first one says, hey, Kev, how was your week? And he responds, good. I listened to 22 hours of James White debates. Okay. Well, normally when someone tells you something like that, when someone tells me I'm the Indiana Algo or something like that, I just go, I'm so sorry. I feel for you. I hope you find some better people to listen to in the future, but I appreciate it. Good. I listened to 22 hours of James White debates. I'll at least hit the little heart thing there because I'll probably never see it again, knowing how Twitter works these days. Anyhow, back to Leighton Flowers. And so this Manny fellow who I think needs to, I get what he's saying, but he needs to take a chill pill, posted this thing from Leighton Flowers. So my problem is, if I stop it, then I have to what? No, these are things that are, they're just in posts, and when you hit them, they open up over here, and when you start playing it, if you hit pause, when you unpause it, it closes the window and puts it back in the original tweet. So you have to start it all over again.
Or question begging by...
I don't think the other one had that in the middle. So I think there's different formats. I think it's a matter of what kind of format it was originally, because I stopped that one, and I think on this one, yeah, I'm looking at the player. The player is completely different on this one than it was the last one. So I think it depends on what format you use when you upload it. I don't know. So I might be able to start. This is only 22 seconds long, so who cares? It doesn't matter on this one. But the liberal Presbyterian chick, it wasn't. I was not going to invest the effort to listen to a heretical chick blathering on. I just wanted to use it as an illustration of how much things have changed since I was in seminary, and I had PCUSA professors that I could learn a lot from. Now, never mind, just Ichabod. Glory is gone. Bury that one. Okay, so here is and I did respond to this on Twitter today. I said, Leighton has always struggled with category errors. He mixes categories badly. Theologically, linguistically, church history. Oh my goodness. Please. It hurts. It's painful. But here's an example of it. And like I said, it's only 22 seconds. So here we go.
Or question begging by assuming a person must be better in order to believe, when the truth is that God created us all in such a way that anyone can put their trust in Christ for salvation. You don't need to be turned into a better person in order to believe in Jesus. You come to Jesus in order to be turned into a better person by him. Anyone can come to him for salvation.
Okay, so this is and this came up in the debate, and I think I made a comment about it, and someone actually responded to me and said they're hearing this over and over and over again from Leighton's followers and people like that, that this is, that we are literally saying that someone has to get better before they can get saved. Okay. And so we've already responded to this, but I want to make sure it's very clear, very obvious when you hear someone saying this. Being spiritually alive is a different category than becoming a better person. Now, I would think that that sounds so obvious and so basic and so duh level that I wouldn't have to say it, but we have to say it. When we say that a person needs to be freed from the shackles of sin, what does Jesus mean in John 8? If the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. Okay, so being set free is not being made a better person. Okay, that's a fundamental, obvious, in-your-face category error. We're not talking about, Jesus doesn't say, you've got to be better to follow me. He says, if the Son sets you free, you'll be free indeed. Freedom is a different category. It's talking about being removed from the shackles of sin and death. That's not being made better. That's not the proper context. Is it appropriate to say that in the valley of the dry bones, that once they come together as living bodies, they are better than they were before? That's not an appropriate term. I mean, I suppose in some way you could say, well, it's better to be alive than dead. Okay, but that's a completely different use of the term better. A resurrection has taken place. Is it better to have a heart of flesh than a heart of stone? Well, again, is that a meaningful question? Are you saying that the person with the heart of stone has to get themselves better? No, it's as silly as saying, is it better for Lazarus to be in the tomb or to be alive? It's just it's a category issue that we learn when we're children. 2-year-olds will make that kind of error, but we grow out of it by reading, by dialoguing with others, by thinking issues through. We come to think more rationally, and we learn to recognize, for example, the use of various forms of irony or sarcasm or things like that. But for some reason, on this subject, the provisionists don't get it. And so they're literally saying, if you have to be born again, regenerated, then what you're saying is you have to be made a better person before you can come to Jesus. Okay, yes, sir. You've raised the...
I'm having just trying to make sense of the thinking. When we say that when the Scripture says the natural man cannot please God, we will point out that the question of is God pleased when we come to Christ? Well, the answer to that is yes. Is he maybe equating that to the better person comes to Christ, the natural man cannot come to Christ, and then he's trying to somehow meander his way through that conflict. We're not saying that the one who comes to Christ is a better person. We're saying that person's been made spiritually alive. God's invaded their life. He's granted them grace and mercy. He's done things to them. They haven't been made perfect.
But without a biblical anthropology, without an understanding of the deadness of man and sin,
right,
without understanding of what it means to have a heart of stone, it can't make any sense to them.
Right.
And that's why
I get the sense here that he's tripping over this idea that the natural man cannot please God, and he's trying to somehow grapple with, what is it that pleases God then? How does the man please God? And he's not finding it anywhere in there.
His assertion is that the natural man can please God. But he has to say that because he doesn't believe in spiritual death.
Yeah, but there's just no way around that. It's so blunt and plain.
I agree. So when you hear someone pulling this canard up and saying, oh, you're saying you have to make yourself better before you can come to Jesus. Jesus will make you a better person. The idea that spiritually dead and spiritually alive are categories that are described by better is just silly. It's I don't know how you get there. I don't know how someone can't see how this language has no meaning. I don't get it. I really honestly don't get it. But there you go. There it is. And so I'm sure there'll be a 2-hour video coming on that too. But yeah, there you go. Okay, there is a move going on in the United States right now. It's happening right here in Arizona. It happened in Pennsylvania. It is the result of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the Dobbs decision, where the forces of death are utilizing their massive amount of financial backing to be promoting in many of the states in the United States constitutional amendments to state constitutions to enshrine not just Roe v. Wade, but at least Roe v. Wade had some pretense of restrictions. Here in Arizona, there are people going around. They are they are not giving full information as to what you're signing when you get your name on, put it on the ballot, all that kind of stuff. We're hoping for some legal redress in regards to that. But it's happening all over the place. And it seems to me that a lot of Christians are surprised. The idea was, well, once Roe v. Wade is overturned, it goes back to the states. And so, that's where we have the grassroots and everything else. And I'm like, for years, there was the idea that because of ultrasounds, because you see those pictures on the refrigerator of, the babies that are coming, that it's really hard for people to deny the humanity of the preborn child, because no one can dispute what I'm about to say. We have more evidence of the individual humanity of the preborn child today than we've ever had before. The womb has been open to us now, photographically, for a long time. I mean, it was back in the 70s that they did that Life, I think it was Life or Time, somebody did that thing where they had all the incredible color pictures of the developing embryo and stuff like that. Now, those were invasive. You had to go in to get those. Now we have not just ultrasounds, but 3D, full color ultrasound video that you can get. You can watch the child moving. You can hear the child. I was just, before this program started, I follow a lot of accounts that have cat and dog stuff on it. Yep, believe it or not, I do. They're cute. Believe me, with all the garbage flowing through Twitter, it's nice once in a while to have something to stop and go, oh, isn't that sweet? But here is this husky, I think. And his mommy, human mommy, is pregnant. And her belly's there. And the huskies, and then all of a sudden it goes, how huskies are. And the dog can sense there's somebody in there. There's somebody in there moving around. And he's like looking for where they, the dog has more common sense than a large proportion of American voters do. We have more evidence of the humanity of the preborn child than we've ever had before. And yet, despite that, what you need to understand, and I think this is vitally important. The next voting generation is the product of the public indoctrination system. which has been utterly corrupted for decades. And if you go through the public indoctrination system, you do not come out as a critical thinker. You do not come out with any sense of the necessity of being consistent in your moral and ethical thinking, if you have any moral and ethical thinking left anyways. In my day, I remember in the 1970s in high school, I was in some of the advanced classes where you would talk politics and things like that in the class. And I remember the number 2 person in the class on the honor roll. I was number 1. There was a young lady named Lori Daniels. And Lori Daniels was an atheist. And so Lori Daniels and I crossed swords regularly in those advanced seminar classes and stuff that you took. You got more credit for and stuff like that. Anyway, but even then, there was still such a weight of cultural momentum from our Christian heritage and background that there were certain givens in regards to the nature of life and the value of life that you just couldn't quite question yet, even though I'd keep going, hey, you keep going that direction, and this is, no. Well, now it's not only there, way past there. Christians tend to shy away from recognizing the truth of the Proverbs that when wisdom speaks in Proverbs 8, he who hates me loves death. If you hate the wisdom of God, if you hate the revelation of God, you love death. And you are going to want to see the promulgation of that which you love. And so you're going to want to see the increase in death. And so we are seeing, we will see this fall in the elections, we will see states, maybe my own right here, extending their public middle finger toward the heavens and enshrining in the constitutions of these states, and maybe this state as well, the right to murder unborn children up to the point of birth. And of course, we all go, why stop there? It's arbitrary. There's no reason for it. Why stop there? And they're not going to, because it's the culture of death. They love death. And so we're surprised by this, but we shouldn't have been surprised by this if we had thought it through. Everyone seeking to rescue the perishing, those who are being put to death unjustly, need to recognize that we are now dealing with a society where the vast majority of childbearing age people have come out of this utterly corrupt mind control system. And it's not a matter of reasoning with them any longer. It is a matter of full-on prophetic warning of God's judgment upon murderers. And see, the pro-life movement won't do that. They won't talk about murder. That's the whole issue there. They won't call it what it is. The whole thing about the woman, oh, she's a victim. They won't call it murder. And so there's no prophetic warning. Who's saying, I say to the state of Arizona, you put this on the ballot and you enshrine in the Constitution of this state the murder of preborn children. Don't ask for a second for God's blessing upon this state. You need to realize in this state, we are so completely dependent upon God's mercy in sending something called rain. This is a desert. The vast majority of the population of the state of Arizona lives south of what's called the Mogollon Rim, and hence in the Sonoran Desert. And if there is not sufficient rainfall, we're toast. That's just all there is to it. I'm not sure where we'd be going, but we're toast. And we're just simply saying to God, bring it, dude. We pass something like this, bring it. We will be morally culpable for what comes as a result of this. That's all there is to it. But that takes a prophetic perspective. The Roman Catholics outside the abortion mills won't do it. And the established pro-life groups won't do it. You know, it's funny. I could have seen this coming because I was involved with Operation Rescue in the 1980s. I was their spokesperson when we shut down Brian Finkel's abortion clinic. I was arrested. And I debated their people on local radio stations and crushed them. No mercy at all. When I say their people, I mean the abortion movement people. But I had to stop my association there because of the clarity with which I proclaimed gospel to Roman Catholics. When it wasn't allowed. You could not have that clear gospel element in the pro-life movement, even in the 1980s. That was late 1980s, 1989, actually. But anyway, what we're seeing, check what's going on in your state. But it is the inevitable result of the use of billions of dollars of our tax money to promulgate the fundamental culture of death. That's what secularism is. Secularism is the culture of death. The LGBTQ movement, culture of death. Abortion movement, culture of death. Euthanasia, culture of death. It's literally all around us, and it's what we have to be battling. It's what we have to be battling. Now, I mentioned that on this last trip between surgeries, I was listening to a biography of Adoniram and Ann Judson while driving. It's not that I didn't know these names or things like that. Obviously, I did. But the book that I read, and I have another book that I have not read yet, it's called To the Golden Shore by Courtney Anderson, The Life of Adoniram Judson. This is a much more substantial sized one. Got to get my Jim Kirk glasses out here. I'm just gonna start getting up in the morning and putting these around my neck. I have 4 or 5 pair at home, and it's just that way they're always there. Just you don't have to look for them. Yeah. Where'd they go? Yeah, that's and these work well. They really do. Anyway, I wanted to read you. I just got this, and so I knew I'd be able to find it very, very quickly, even though I didn't know the book. And I did. It took me just a matter of moments. We have, I don't know how exactly to describe it, the ease of life that we've all grown up with now. Everybody who's alive today has had a pretty easy life in comparison to people who were living on the frontier, people who were living before modern medicine, people who did not have electricity, telephones, any type of telecommunication. If your way of communicating with people far away would take weeks to months, sometimes years, okay, we've never experienced that. We have lived like kings and queens in comparison to pretty much the entire history of humanity. And we've become accustomed to it. We think it's a right. It could never go away. And we have been absolutely spoiled by it. All of us, myself included. And so when you read about what life was like in the past, I think personally, and I'm speaking to myself, you can, maybe this isn't true of you. I think that when I read about ancient people lived in ancient contexts in Rome and Athanasius or a Gregory or someone like that, there's almost a disconnect. It was so long ago that it's hard to see where the connection is. But when you read about people in the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, now we're getting up to the modern period, and you can make the connection a little bit easier. And Adoniram Judson is going into ministry at the beginning of the 19th century, so the early 1800s. And so for me anyways, maybe that's where where it clicks more, because my mom used to take me out of school and take me to Gettysburg, and so those people, Grant, Lee, they're a little bit more real to me because, I'm only a few generations removed from them. Maybe that's what makes it more along these lines. I don't know. But Adoniram, I have a feeling someday I'm going to put together a keynote presentation, because there's just so much. His conversion, the fact that a man he met in college who converted him to deism. Adoniram's traveling. He's sort of lost as to what he's going to do, where he's going to go. He's sort of been disconnected from his family. His dad's a pastor. He has told them he's a deist now. He's not finding any satisfaction, even though he's an extremely brilliant person, brilliant mind. I mean, he will eventually translate the entire Bible into Burmese. And it's the only English translation to this day. Not English translation, Bible translation into the Burmese language. He did it. He learned that language on his own. And then translated not the English into Burmese, he translated the Hebrew and Greek. So he knew Greek, he knew Hebrew, he knew Latin. Brilliant man. But he's just sort of wandering around. And he stops in this inn, this tavern/inn. And the only room they have for him is a room that's divided by a curtain. And they said, really sorry, but there's a man dying in the other half of the room. He's deathly sick. You may not get much sleep. And he stays the night, and around 4 a.m. in the morning, it gets quiet, and he gets sleep after that. He comes down, finds out that's when the guy died. And in the conversation with the innkeeper, he finds out that this fellow had gone to the same university. And when he inquires about his name, it was Eames, the guy who introduced him to deism. His friend had died moaning and groaning in a horrible fashion on the other side of that room. He has happened. Adoniram Judson was no open theist. He was no provisionist. He was no Arminian. And his very conversion involved the death of his friend, his young friend. And I just stop for a moment and ask everybody, does God have the right to do that? Where do you think that disease came from that took Eames, E-A-M-E-S, last name? Where do you think that disease came from? You see, if you don't believe in the decree of God, if you don't believe in the sovereign decree of God, which results in providence, that God's decree is involved in the actions in time, then this was pure happenstance. God was sitting in heaven going, oh, look at that. Whoa, who could have seen that? Right? That Adoniram Judson, who God has given all these gifts to, but if you're an open theist, he doesn't know he's going to go to Burma. Why did he give him all those gifts? Well, I don't know. But he just happens to stop at that inn while traveling. He's exhausted and ends up in the same room with Eames as he's dying. You don't think God has... I guarantee you one thing. Adoniram Judson knew God had everything to do with that. And he lived the rest of his life in light of the fact that God had everything to do with that. And then he gets this wild and crazy idea to become the first foreign missionary overseas to the people of Burma. And everyone looks at him like he's nuts. We are so used to overseas missions concepts that we cannot understand how rare that idea was in the early 1800s. How everybody figured you'd just throwing your life away. Let alone could you find a way of getting support for it. He has made the decision, this is what he's going to do. And he's invited over to a deacon's house at a church. And the deacon's young daughter, Ann, is sort of entertaining everyone. And he's smitten. Now, I'm not talking smitten the way that we talk about smitten in our day, where love is just all this, it's just pure emotions, and once the emotion stops, you just get a divorce and go on to somebody else. He sees in this young woman what he needs in a companion and what he's going to be doing. And so you didn't just go out on some dates and do stuff like that. Courtship was very different at that time. And once he had started communicating with her, talking with her, he writes to her parents to ask for her hand in marriage. You go there first. I did too. I talked to Kelly's dad before I asked her. Now, we were talking about marriage, but I don't remember my parents telling me this is what you need to do. It just sort of got communicated to me somehow. But he's going overseas. He's going to Burma. And you got to realize that's not getting on a plane and flying to Burma. That's not a 2-week missions trip. Ships sank regularly. They sprung leaks. They had diseases. They became plague ships. And it took months to get across the ocean to go that far. Months. So he writes a letter to Ann's. Now, interestingly enough, her nickname that he would actually call her normally would be Nancy later on. But Ann's parents, Nancy Hasseltine, Ann Hasseltine, but normally called Nancy. He sat down and wrote to Nancy's father. And I wanted to read you what he wrote, and part of what he wrote in that letter. I have now to ask whether you can consent to part with your daughter early next spring, to see her no more in this world. Whether you can consent to her departure and her subjection to the hardships and sufferings of a missionary life. Whether you can consent to her exposure to the dangers of the ocean, to the fatal influence of the southern climate of India, to every kind of want and distress, to degradation, insult, persecution, and perhaps a violent death. Can you consent to all this for the sake of him who left his heavenly home and died for her and for you, for the sake of perishing immortal souls, for the sake of Zion and the glory of God? Can you consent to all this in hope of soon meeting your daughter in the world of glory, with the crown of righteousness, brightened with the acclamations of praise, which shall redound to her Savior, from heathens saved through her means, from eternal woe and despair? I'm just happening to look at the commentary that comes afterwards. Like I said, I haven't read this book yet. There's a different book that I read. It was a letter that must have made John Hasseltine's eyes pop nearly out of his head. One would have expected him to agree with the father of a friend of Nancy's, one of the numerous Kimball clan, who, when he heard that young Judson was paying court to Nancy Hasseltine, declared stoutly that he would tie his own daughter to the bedpost rather than let her go on such a harebrained venture. Because remember, there weren't any missionaries yet. This guy was doing something that was completely out of the norm. Now, if you're wondering, his response was, we will leave that up to her. And she, knowing what she was heading for, agreed. Married Adoniram, and shortly thereafter, they left everything. They did not get on that ship with the idea that we'll be back in a couple years. They knew that was not the case. Even though they could not have the kind of preparation that we give to missionaries today, they understood, just simply from the travel time, that it would be years before they would ever return, if they ever returned at all. And the idea was they never would. They did not expect to live. And many of the missionary couples came over there. They would lose. If the woman was pregnant, she'd lose the baby on the ship. She'd die on the ship. He'd die on the ship. Only she would arrive. I mean, there were so many of these stories that Judson himself experienced in people being sent over. The amount of death, just the number of missionaries who died. But what an amazing commitment. And he hadn't even met these people. There were no videos to watch. You know, there were no movies. No marketing campaigns, nothing like that at all. And yet he had that commitment that he stuck to. He did come back to the United States. She had long died. And his second wife had died. All of his children to Anne had died. Some of his children to his second wife had died. Then she died. He met a woman when he was back here in the United States who was a great writer. And he got in touch with her to write the biography of his wife, Anne. They ended up marrying. But then she died. And then he became deathly ill. And while on ship, he had gone back. And the doctor said, the only way that you're going to get over this is if you get out of this environment and get out to sea and stuff like that. And so they didn't have drugs. They didn't know. And like 8 or 9 days into the trip, he died at sea and was buried at sea. No grave to go to, anything like that. And yes, by the time he did come back, 30 some odd years down the road from when they left, he was now famous. Why? Because Anne had come back for a while and had written a book about their experiences. And it had been republished and republished and republished. after that period of time. And so when he stepped off that ship, the one time he returned briefly to the United States, there was a huge crowd, and he was speaking all over the place, and certainly helped to expand missionary efforts as a result of all of that. But then he went back to what was now his home. The things he experienced there, the degradations, the persecutions, the imprisonment, well, that's why it's a pretty thick book. I highly recommend them to you. I bought copies of the book that I listened to for my grandkids. I bought a children's version for my youngest, who can read. And I quite literally bribed them. Read it, write a 4-page review for me, and you get real cash. Because I want them to be exposed to a mindset that is all too often not ours today. It is not that Adoniram Judson never questioned what was going on in his life. There were weeks and months of great depression after the loss of children and the loss of Anne. But he remained absolutely committed and faithful because he believed in the absolute sovereignty of God. He believed that everything that came to him came from the hand of God, and therefore it had a purpose. That changes everything. That changes everything. And I have not gone through anything in comparison to what he went through. And I'll be honest with you, it's almost makes me nervous. Because I go, I can't see how I could have endured. I can't see how I could have endured. The things that he went through, the loss of every physical possession, and pretty much everyone you loved. All of these missionaries experienced death all around them. It changes how you view things. And we just don't know what that's like. But one thing that's absolutely certain, much of the theology that infects the broad spectrum of American evangelicalism could never have given birth to the modern missionary movement. Those men were Calvinists. They were Calvinists. They weren't Arminians. No open theist can begin to even have a glimpse of why Adoniram Judson or Carey or any of the others did what they did. Their theology of God is so small and so pitiful that they could never understand it. Could never understand it. Just couldn't. But can you imagine writing that letter? Being a young man? She was, I think when they, just off the top of my head, I think, because on the front here you can see they're going up the gangplank to the boat. There's Adoniram and Ann. I think, I could look it up, but I don't have time to. I think he was 23 and she was 22. 23 and 22. To have the guts to write that kind of letter. I'm sure Ann saw it. And there they go. Saying goodbye to everything that they knew. That's the kind of commitment that what's coming our way may produce again. What is that worth? What is that worth? questions to think about. So, again, I can't tell you what the schedule is going to look like next week. I have surgery on Monday. If all goes well, what? Oh, if all goes well, we could have a program on Tuesday. We literally could. I wouldn't be counting on it, but it's possible. We will see. But we will do the best we can to get back to some sort of regular schedule. And of course, my hope and prayer is I won't be going, and the next surgery is 2 weeks after that. Let's hope that's not the case. Yes, sir. You certainly hope that's not the case because you're tired of having to do everything.
Well, there's that, yes. We have been having behind-the-scenes discussions regarding moving forward with a fundraiser.
Oh, yes.
And,
I'm sorry.
We're very, very new to this. It is not something that we do often, let alone ever in the next permutation. I did a survey last week as to whether or not people preferred that we do a raffle or another auction, and it was overwhelmingly in favor of a raffle. And now we're trying to work out the details behind doing that, but it's coming up. Maybe take a moment and hold up the cross that I finished yesterday that now has this right in front of you, right there. You have to reach the laptop. But we're going to be auctioning. I guess the idea is going to be we're going to try to do it simultaneously.
The Bible's on the thing over there. The high stool. Right
yeah. There. So explain the idea there.
So this is your multi-layer cross. It's now been stained, so all the different kinds of wood have. I'll let him do that. Oiled, sorry.
Yes, yeah, mineral oil.
Mineral oil. Okay, all right. Yeah, so this is handcrafted by the president of Alpha and Omega Ministries. That's the thing that should make you all go, gotta have that. So that's Rich's contribution, and then of course we have Jeffrey Rice's ESV Creeds and Confessions volume with the sort of rustic leather cover, brown and deep burgundy type stuff. And we will eventually have a blade from Derek Melton as well. So, yes.
So essentially, the idea generally right now is that we're going to do them all simultaneously. We'll have 3 different auctions. You'll be able to purchase as many tickets as you want. And we're just trying to determine, A, how long should it go and what the prices should be based on what the market value would be of those items. And so we're still working out those details. And in the meantime, we're going to be looking to Derek to find out what his time frame is for the knife coming in. And then we're going to put all those up.
Yeah, that's outside of my realm of expertise, that's for sure. Yeah, we'll be letting everybody know because I know yesterday morning, what we've decided, what we're doing now is we've found an RV park. There's actually 2 of them. We haven't used the other one yet, but we might need to at some time in the future. But there's some RV parks in Sun City. And what we've done up until this point in time is I would take the RV to my house and park it on the street in front of my house and plug it in. And that's the way you get the refrigerator cooling down and stuff like that. This beast is too big. It doesn't fit on the street. You can't put the slides out because then no one can get around you, and it just wouldn't work to do it. So what we're doing now is we're actually going to an RV park, and I back her into a slot, and then we can have everything hooked up and the air conditioning running, the slides out. We can get everything loaded, and then I leave from there. So yesterday morning, I picked the unit up from the RV park where I'd parked it, and we took it into our it's not a repair facility. It's a dealership but it's where we take it for all of our maintenance and stuff like that. And this was her first run, so there were a bunch of things that needed to be addressed. And then we're also going, we really need to have as reliable an internet capacity as possible. So a roof-mounted system, 5G system, rather than just the little modem that we've been carrying around, which has always driven me insane, and Starlink. But we need to run some wires in the unit to be able to do that right. So they're going to be doing stuff like that. And then we had the little things that you need to do. You take a unit out for the first time, and stuff happens. It's the break-in run, and that's what happened with this one. So we had a leak one night. Downpour, huge downpour in West Texas. It took about 20 minutes, and then it started leaking. Wasn't bad, but we took care of it. But needs to be addressed. And some slide-out issues, not quite where they need to be. And so anyways, the poor guy sitting back there, Rich and I are going through stuff, and he's typing all this in. He's only got like 10 slots on the form. And I think he had to go to a second form because we're like, and then, remember that? Oh, yeah, then we got to. And I think there was something that you had forgotten that I actually remembered because it was sort of toward the beginning of the trip. So yeah, the point being, the bill on that is going to be substantial. And so the things we're doing here are just to help the travel fund and defray those things. I pull out 2 months from today. So I've got 2 months home, and I pull out for Colorado 2 months from today. And so those will help with that, and be praying that we can arrange the 2 debates that we're attempting to arrange, one in Colorado Springs, one in Denver. I have some thoughts about that. I may, given the importance of the subject, be willing to debate some folks that otherwise I would not want to for behavioral reasons, but we'll see. I'm thinking about it. We'll see. But so we'll be letting you know next week, Lord willing, about all that stuff in regards to the raffle, however we're going to be doing it, and you too can have. How tall is this? 12 inches? Okay. 12 inches. There you go. All right. That'll do it. Lord willing, see you. The earlier next week we see you, the better things go on Monday. How's that sound? I'll probably have black and blue marks on my arms again from getting poked and stabbed and all the rest of that kind of fun stuff, but that's just how it goes. So we will, Lord willing, see you early next week. Thanks for watching. God bless.